Yo, what it do, family? Tap in with me for a second, because we got a situation on the table today that is genuinely one of the wildest things I've watched unfold in this entire cultural cycle, and I promise you it's going to have you sitting up straight in your chair before the first 2 minutes are over. Before we dive in, do me the courtesy, smash that like button, lock in with the channel if you a new face around here, and hit that little bell so the next drop lands in your notifications the second it goes live. Because what we're about to break down is one of them stories that ain't gonna sit right with a lot of people, and I need y'all in the trenches with me on this one. Now, this is wild to me, dog. This is nuts to me. I want you to picture it. Picture the exact same situation, but flipped. Picture the shoe on the opposite foot. Picture the mirror turned around. Because I'ma be real with you. If the roles had reversed on this one, if the same exact behavior was coming from the other side of the aisle, the entire internet would be on fire right now. Every timeline would be melting. Every commentary channel would already have their outrage face loaded and queued up. Every panel show would be booking emergency episodes. But somehow, because the coin landed the way the coin landed, half the culture is treating this like it's just Tuesday. And that ain't sitting right with me. Not one bit. Let me tell you exactly what we're dealing with. Because the story has layers, and every layer is more absurd than the last one. Word on the block is a group of Drake supporters, a whole little squad of them, packed into a car like it was a school field trip, decided to roll up on what they claim is Kendrick Lamar's residence. Not his tour bus. Not his label office. Not the studio where Kendrick Lamar records. His crib. The spot where the man lays his head at night. The spot where his family lives. The spot where, on any given evening, Kendrick Lamar is probably reading a book to his kids or sitting down for dinner with his partner. And these dudes decided the funny move, the hilarious, engagement farming, TikTok baiting, algorithm chasing move, was to play a game. A game that most of us stopped playing when we lost our baby teeth. They rolled up to Kendrick Lamar's front door to ding-dong ditch the man. Let that sink in for a second. Ding-dong ditch. Kendrick Lamar. The same Kendrick Lamar who bodied an entire cultural cycle last year in front of the whole world. The same Kendrick Lamar who moved the T-Dot itself to sing back to him for an entire stadium encore. The same Kendrick Lamar who headlined the Super Bowl halftime show in front of the largest television audience on the calendar. That Kendrick Lamar. And these dudes thought the correct professional move, the correct content creator move, was to press the doorbell and run into the bushes. Now, before we go any deeper into this thing, I gotta drop the disclaimer because I don't want anybody in the comments to accuse me of jumping to conclusions. I don't know for 100% certainty that this was actually Kendrick Lamar's real address. I've seen the footage. I've seen the receipts people are passing around online. I've seen the geotags. I've seen the reposts. I've seen the Twitter threads breaking down the landscaping to try to match it up to previous footage. But I ain't the deed office. I ain't the tax assessor. I can't verify property records on live camera. So I'ma leave that door cracked open just a little bit. What I can tell you is this. These dudes clearly believed it was Kendrick Lamar's crib. That's what they were selling to their audience. That's what they were selling to the algorithm. That's what they were selling to the fans of the fan base that they were trying to impress. And in their heads, that belief was the whole point of the exercise. They wanted the smoke of standing on Kendrick Lamar's welcome mat. They wanted the bragging rights of being able to say they showed up. And this is where I gotta pump the brakes on the analysis for a second, because I've been watching this whole beef and all its various side quests unfold for a long time now. And I'm starting to notice something. I'm starting to notice a pattern. Not a coincidence. Not a one-off. Not a random anomaly. A pattern. A trend line. A repeating shape in the culture. Certain types of behavior keep cropping up from a certain corner of the fandom. And it keeps escalating with each new week. Every week it's a new stunt. Every week the temperature ticks up another degree. Every week the line moves a little further out into dangerous territory. And when you zoom out and look at the full mosaic of the last 6 months of content, you start to see something ugly forming underneath all the clout chasing and the engagement farming. That's what we're really going to get into today, because there's a second video I want to walk you through after this one. And once you see them back to back, side by side, in the same sitting, you're going to peep what I'm hinting at. You're going to see the shape of the problem. So let's start with the ding-dong ditch clip. Let's actually walk through what these dudes did, frame by frame, moment by moment. They pull up in a caravan of cars, phones already recording before they even open the doors, because obviously the whole exercise is content. They ain't there to say hi. They ain't there for a meet and greet. They ain't there for an autograph. They there to farm the algorithm. First dude opens with what he calls a message for Kendrick Lamar. He wants to broadcast the message that Kendrick Lamar caused Drake stress. That's the framing. That's the opening salvo. Kendrick Lamar allegedly caused their guy some sleepless nights during that whole diss cycle. And now they at Kendrick Lamar's front gate demanding some kind of cosmic repayment on behalf of an artist who doesn't know them, hasn't met them, and has probably never seen a single one of their videos. As if Kendrick Lamar owes them anything. As if Kendrick Lamar even knows they exist. As if Drake himself, the actual party they claim to be representing in this ridiculous late-night mission, signed off on this shenanigan. And that's my first pause point, because let's be honest with each other for a second. These dudes hope Drake sees this. That's the whole play. That's the entire economic model of the video they're making. They ain't gotta admit it out loud. They ain't gotta write it in the description. But every single frame of this footage is engineered with one prayer, and one prayer only. That Drizzy the boy stumbles across the clip on his timeline, hits that little heart button, maybe drops a comment, maybe reposts it to his story, and suddenly they upgraded from anonymous streamers to affiliated affiliates. That's the dream. That's the entire return on investment on this stunt. Because in their heads, if Drake even acknowledges the clip with a single emoji, they won. They won the whole internet. They won the whole week. They can retire on the clout for the next month at least. That is the psychology that produced this footage. That's what you're really watching. But here's what they ain't calculating in their little content strategy meeting. Kendrick Lamar has a security apparatus. Kendrick Lamar has cameras positioned in places you wouldn't think to look. And I don't mean that as a metaphor. Watch the footage carefully. One of these dudes actually clocks a surveillance camera tucked into the branches of a tree on the property. Cameras in trees. Which tells me one of two things, and both of those things are bad for our streamers. Either that ain't Kendrick Lamar's actual residence, in which case they harassing some poor unrelated homeowner who's about to have the worst night of their life through absolutely no fault of their own. Or that is Kendrick Lamar's residence, in which case the man clearly knows that people be trying stuff, and he's got the whole perimeter wired top to bottom. Either way, they losing. Either way, this stunt ends with somebody's face on file. Either way, this stunt ends with a lawyer's letter or worse. Now they escalate. And the escalation ladder is worth studying, because this is where the psychology really shows itself. They start banging on the door. They start yelling into the intercom. One dude pretends to be DoorDash. Another dude pretends to be a delivery driver dropping off room service. Another dude starts calling out Kendrick Lamar by his government name in the most disrespectful cadence he can muster. They stacking the disrespect one layer at a time. They ratcheting up the volume, because they know silence is bad for engagement. They know a video with no drama don't retain viewers. They need the video to have peaks. They need the video to have twists. They need the video to have stakes. So they manufactured all of that drama, all of those stakes, all of those peaks, on Kendrick Lamar's front step, using a stranger's property as their own personal set piece. And this is where the tone shifts in the footage, because for the first time in the clip, they realize somebody might actually be home. A vehicle pulls up onto the property. A serious-looking figure exits the vehicle. And suddenly all that big talk starts to shrink. All that clout-chasing energy starts to compress into a much smaller and more nervous shape. One of them mumbles into the camera that he can't run. Another one is visibly terrified. Another one is trying to walk backwards without looking backwards, which is the physical vocabulary of a person who understands, in real time, that they may have miscalculated the entire situation. And I said this earlier, and I'ma say it again louder for the folks in the back, you dancing on live wires around this dude. Because it don't matter if it's Kendrick Lamar. It don't matter if it's your favorite artist. It don't matter if it's a random accountant who happens to live at that address. You do not roll up on a stranger's residence, in America, in this current climate, with your face on camera, banging on doors and shouting government names, and reasonably expect the interaction to end in a hug. That is not how the physics of this country works. That is not how the physics of any country works. Somebody is going to get hurt one of these nights. And it ain't going to be who they think. Let me pause and pull the lens back for a second, because I don't want anybody in the comments to twist my words on this. I ain't saying Kendrick Lamar supporters are angels either. Every fandom has its obsessive corner. Every fandom has its terminally online contingent. Every fandom has its unhinged extremists. Kendrick Lamar's supporters got them too. Drake supporters got them. Nicki fans got them. J. Cole fans got them. Even the wildest one I ever seen with my own two eyes was Joey Badass supporters. I did not see that one coming, but they got them too. Every artist attracts a certain kind of obsessive attachment, and I've been on record about that dynamic for years now. But what I'm watching right now, from this one specific corner of the culture, has a distinct flavor. It has a specific texture. It has a signature move set. It's less, we love our artist and want to celebrate him, and more, we need to be seen by our artist and will do anything to catch his eye. And that distinction is the whole ballgame. Because when your motivation is being seen by the artist rather than celebrating the artist, you'll do anything for a nod. You'll cross any line. You'll harass any stranger. You'll show up at any address. You'll put yourself in situations that a level-headed adult would never even consider stepping into. And that's the poison that's spreading right now across this whole ecosystem. Now, back to the clip. They're still on the porch. They're still ringing the bell. They're still shouting through the door. One of them makes the truly wild suggestion that they should tell whoever answers that they were sent by Aubrey. Sent by Aubrey. Let me repeat that one more time, because it deserves emphasis. These dudes were prepared to invoke Drake's government name as the alleged sponsor of their late-night doorstep visit to Kendrick Lamar's alleged residence. If Drake didn't send them, that's a wild thing to put in the man's mouth, and it's the kind of thing that Drake's legal team is going to have opinions about. And if Drake did send them, which I have zero evidence of, that's an even wilder problem, because now you're implicating an artist in something that could put a target on his own back. Either way, whoever thought that particular punchline was clever should have kept it in the group chat, because now it's in the record. Here's the thing though. Even them saying it out loud tells you the psychology of the whole operation. It tells you what these dudes think will make the story bigger. It tells you what button they think they're pressing. They believe invoking Drake's name gives them cover. They believe it gives them legitimacy. They believe it turns the stunt from a random late-night trespass into a message from headquarters, delivered by loyal soldiers on official business. That's the delusion. That's the fantasy world these dudes are living in. And that delusion is exactly what's fueling this whole pattern. I'ma break down in a minute. Because delusion is not a passive condition. Delusion is an engine. Delusion moves people to take action. Delusion produces footage. Because let me read you some of the community reactions to this clip. And I want y'all to notice something as I go through these. I want y'all to notice that the response ain't split down the middle. It ain't controversial. It ain't a coin flip. It ain't half of them defending it and half of them condemning it. Everybody who saw this clip is on the same page. And that page reads, "This is corny." Somebody wrote, "This is what happens when your artist attracts a younger, chronically online fan base." Somebody else wrote, "These are the shooters Drake always be rapping about." Somebody else wrote, "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes." Somebody else wrote, "When Kendrick Lamar supporters do something even a fraction as reckless as this, the entire internet forms a mob within the hour. But when it's the other side, it's crickets." Somebody else wrote, "Imagine ending up on the wrong side of a police report for Drake, of all people." Somebody else wrote, "Drake supporters call Kendrick Lamar's supporters cornballs, and then Drake's supporters go and do this." Somebody else wrote, "This is next-level bad decision-making." Somebody else wrote, "This is the kind of behavior that ends careers before they start." Somebody else wrote, "I don't even ride for Kendrick Lamar, and this made me embarrassed for the whole culture." Somebody else wrote, "This is what parasocial delusion looks like when it graduates from a comment section to a camera." And that's the consensus. That's not me editorializing. That's the collective voice of the audience looking at the same footage and independently arriving at the same verdict. There's no defense being mounted. There's no counter-narrative being pushed. There's no organized rebuttal in the comments. Even the neutral parties, even the folks who don't ride for Kendrick Lamar, even the folks who are neutral on the whole beef, are looking at this and saying, "Nah, this is too much. This crossed a line." And that unanimity is telling. Because in a culture war this heated, unanimity is genuinely rare. When you see everybody agreeing on something, that's when you know a line got crossed. That's when you know the behavior itself has become indefensible. Alright, now let me set up the second part of this video, because this is where the pattern really shows itself in a way that I don't think anybody can honestly deny. Y'all peep what I'm hinting at. Y'all remember, maybe 2 years ago now, maybe closer to 3 depending on how you count, when things got hot outside Drake's own compound. Y'all remember that moment in the news cycle? Nod your head at the camera, and drop a like on the video if you remember what I'm talking about. That was a serious moment. That was a genuinely scary moment. That was the kind of moment that made everybody involved in the culture pause and rethink how far this thing was going to go. And to this very day, we don't have a definitive, court-verified, published answer on who was behind it or exactly why. But the aftermath of that incident cast a long shadow over this entire cultural cycle. And ever since then, there's been this simmering feeling in the air that things could escalate at any minute, that the temperature was rising underneath the surface even during the quiet weeks. Now, back then, the immediate conversation got aimed at Kendrick Lamar's side of the aisle. There was speculation. There was blame. There was heat directed at anyone perceived to be aligned with Kendrick Lamar in that particular city. And whether that blame was fair or unfair, and I ain't here to litigate that question tonight, the pattern of blame got set. It got established. It got carved into the culture's memory. And now, watching these current stunts unfold in real time, I can't help but notice something. I can't help but notice that the direction of the aggression has fully reversed since then. But the coverage of that aggression has not caught up. The energy is now flowing the other way. The doorstep stunts, the confrontations, the videos of dudes yelling at strangers over song preferences, the public assaults over portable speakers, all of that is now coming from one specific direction. And that direction is being extended way more grace than the opposite direction ever got. Way more benefit of the doubt. Way more boys will be boys energy. Way less accountability journalism. That's what I mean when I say I'm noticing a pattern. That's what I mean when I say a trend line is forming underneath all the noise. And I want to show you the second clip that finally convinced me this is more than just a coincidence or a run of bad news. This second clip is genuinely upsetting. It's not funny. It's not a stunt. There's no punchline. There's no comic timing. It's real-world aggression happening to a real-world stranger in broad daylight in a busy area. And the entire trigger for that aggression is simply the fact that a Kendrick Lamar record was being played out loud within earshot of the wrong people. Let me set the scene for you before we watch. We're in Toronto. Big crowd. Public sidewalk. Ordinary evening. Somebody has a portable speaker and they're playing music. That's it. That's the whole crime being committed. Playing music. And a group of dudes rolls up on him and starts yelling. They start demanding that the music be turned off immediately. They start hurling threats. They start invoking territorial dominance over the block. Don't play Kendrick Lamar in my city. Don't play Kendrick Lamar around here. Don't play Kendrick Lamar in these streets. Don't play Kendrick Lamar where we can hear it. And they escalate the situation quickly. They physically grab the speaker out of the man's hand. They yank it out. They throw it across the sidewalk. Then when the owner goes to pick it back up, they attack him. Multiple attackers on one victim. In broad daylight. Over a song. Let me pause on that, because I want us to sit with the absurdity of it for a second before we move on. We are now at the point in this cultural cycle where a citizen cannot play a song on their own personal speaker on their own personal evening walk without getting jumped by a group of strangers. That's not a beef. That's not a feud. That's not a rap battle. That's a public safety concern. That is a slow-motion escalation ladder that started with witty diss tracks in a booth and has now landed on somebody's ribs on a sidewalk in a real city. And the reason it landed there, in my opinion, is because for months on end, certain influencers, certain streamers, certain podcast hosts, certain corners of the internet have been signaling, through language, through jokes, through territory claims, through repeated framing, that this kind of aggression is acceptable, that it's part of the fun, that it's a natural extension of the rap beef, that it's the price of admission for having strong music opinions in a hot cultural moment. And I gotta call it what it is, because if I don't call it out on my own platform, I'm part of the problem too. It's not part of the game. It never was part of the game. A rap beef between two artists at that level is a spectator sport. It's not a call to arms. It's not an invitation to hunt strangers who happen to enjoy the wrong artist on a Saturday night. And any influencer, any streamer, any personality, any commentator who has been quietly laundering this energy into the mainstream needs to sit down and look in the mirror. Because the receipts are stacking up higher every week. The pattern is undeniable at this point. And somewhere along the way, the fun stopped being fun. The joke stopped being a joke. The bit stopped being a bit. And we're standing in the middle of the consequences now. Let me read some of the reactions to this Toronto clip, because just like the ding-dong ditch footage, the community response was unanimous. Somebody wrote, the same city that had a whole stadium chanting one more time at Kendrick Lamar's show is now the same city where dudes are getting jumped for playing Kendrick Lamar out loud? Make it make sense. Somebody wrote, this is a cornball practicing his tough guy audition on an easy target. Somebody wrote, Drake had a whole T-dot embarrassment last year when a sold-out stadium screamed encore for Kendrick Lamar's records. This is the sequel nobody asked for. Somebody wrote, bro didn't even sound tough. He sounded like he was reading from a script somebody handed him. Somebody wrote, the same fanbase that calls other people goofy pulls stunts like this? Somebody wrote, this ain't fandom. This is a personality disorder wearing a jersey. Somebody wrote, imagine assaulting a stranger over an artist who doesn't know you and would probably ask you to stop if he did. Somebody wrote, Kendrick Lamar didn't send them and neither did Drake. This is just cowards using a rap beef as a cover story for being aggressive in public. And once again, the response is unanimous. Nobody is defending the aggressor. Nobody is out here writing think pieces about how this was actually a righteous cause. Nobody is spinning it. The people who saw this clip, regardless of which artist they ride for in the ongoing culture war, all landed in the same place. And that same place is, this is out of pocket, this is beyond corny, this is genuinely dangerous, and somebody is going to get seriously hurt if this pattern continues at its current velocity. Now let me be crystal clear about my own position here, because I don't want anybody twisting my words in the comments and trying to spin this into something it ain't. I don't co-sign violence. I don't co-sign confrontations. I don't co-sign attacks over music. I don't want to see anybody get jumped over a song. And I don't want to see anybody get jumped for playing the wrong record at the wrong time. Full stop. That's my position, and I'ma repeat it as many times as I need to. But at the same time, I ain't naive. I've lived in the real world long enough to know that when you keep pushing an escalation ladder in one direction, eventually somebody at the top of the ladder is going to push back. And when that pushback finally lands, it's rarely proportional to what triggered it. That's the tragedy of the pattern I'm describing tonight. The first few incidents are silly. The middle incidents are concerning. And the eventual incident, the one that finally makes the actual news cycle, the one that gets covered on CNN, the one that ends up as a Netflix documentary, that one is catastrophic. And by the time we get there, it's too late to walk any of it back. It's too late to apologize. It's too late to unfilm the video. That's why I keep saying, you dancing on live wires around this dude. And by this dude, I don't necessarily mean Kendrick Lamar specifically. I mean any human being whose piece you decide to disrupt for a viral moment. You don't know who they are. You don't know what they got going on. You don't know what their week has looked like. You don't know if they got a permit, a partner, a plan, a pre-existing reason to be on edge. You don't know. And when you gamble on that ignorance for a clip, the odds ain't in your favor. Not on a long enough timeline. Not with the volume of stunts being filmed every week right now. Let me zoom back out to Kendrick Lamar for a second, because I think the framing on him in these stunts has been off from the jump. Kendrick Lamar is not a small artist. Kendrick Lamar is not an unknown quantity. Kendrick Lamar is not a rookie trying to catch a wave. Kendrick Lamar is a Pulitzer-holding, Super Bowl headlining, culture-shaping, generation-defining figure. When you decide to roll up on Kendrick Lamar's alleged doorstep, as a joke, as a stunt, as a bit, as a piece of content, as anything, you are volunteering yourself into a set of consequences that a random YouTube streamer with 3,000 subscribers is not equipped to handle. Kendrick Lamar has legal representation. Kendrick Lamar has private security. Kendrick Lamar has label backing. Kendrick Lamar has a documented history of not entertaining foolishness in his personal life. So the risk-reward calculus on this stunt is upside down before the car even pulls into the driveway. The upside is a few thousand views on a channel that already exists. The downside is a criminal record, a civil suit, a restraining order, or something worse. And here's the part that really gets to me the more I think about it. These dudes think they're being brave. They think they're being cheeky. They think they're being clever. They think they're pulling off the content coup of the year. But brave is not the correct word for what they're actually doing. Brave is confronting somebody your own size on equal terms in a fair setting. Brave is putting your name on your convictions in the daylight when there's a cost involved. What these dudes are doing is the opposite of brave. They're farming clout by disrupting a stranger's peace, hiding behind the numbers of a group, and then bragging about it once they've retreated to a safe distance. That's not bravery. That's cosplay. That's a costume. That's a role they read about online and decided to try on for a night. And costumes don't stop bullets. Costumes don't stop lawsuits. Costumes don't stop consequences. Costumes come off in the morning, and the person underneath still has to face whatever's waiting for them. So what happens next in this whole saga? Because that's the real question. That's the question we should all be sitting with tonight. The pattern is escalating. The stunts are getting bolder. The public confrontations are getting more physical. The doorstep visits are getting closer to the actual door. The confrontations are getting closer to actual violence. And nobody with a real platform is pumping the brakes on any of it. The influencers who reposted the ding-dong ditch clip laughed at it and moved on. The streamers who covered the Toronto footage treated it like a highlight reel. The comment sections are outraged for sure, but outrage don't stop the next clip from being filmed. Outrage don't stop the next escalation from getting greenlit in somebody's group chat. So what breaks the cycle? What actually breaks the cycle? That's the question I keep coming back to when I turn my camera off at night. I'll tell you what I think breaks it. I think the cycle breaks when somebody higher up on the food chain finally says, enough. I think the cycle breaks when an artist with actual leverage in this culture says publicly, on camera, on their own platform, leave my supporters out of this. Do not roll up on Kendrick Lamar's crib. Do not jump strangers on my behalf. Do not treat my music, or anyone's music, as a weapon. I think that's the only voice that can actually cool the temperature down at this point. Because these dudes filming stunts, they ain't listening to me. They ain't listening to the comment section. They ain't listening to journalists. They ain't listening to their moms. But they might listen to the artist they're claiming to represent when they film these clips. And that's the only lever left to pull that hasn't already been pulled. But even that ain't guaranteed to work. Because even when artists do speak up, even when they publicly distance themselves from the worst of their fandom, the parasocial contingent doesn't always take the hint. Sometimes they double down. Sometimes they interpret the artist's disavowal as evidence that the artist is being censored by the industry. Sometimes they convince themselves they know better than the actual person they claim to be defending. Sometimes they decide the artist is under duress and is being forced to say the disavowal against his will. That's how deep the delusion goes at this stage of the cycle. That's how far the psychology has drifted from anything resembling reality. All right, let me bring this whole thing back to the practical. Let me bring it back to what we can actually take away from these two clips, side by side, as citizens who consume content and shape culture with our clicks and our comments. Takeaway 1. Do not roll up on anybody's residence. Not for a joke, not for a bit, not for a viral moment, not for a check. If your content strategy requires you to trespass on a stranger, your content strategy is broken and you need a new one. Find a new angle. Find a new pivot. Find a new hustle. There's a million ways to make engaging content that don't involve knocking on doors you weren't invited to knock on. Takeaway 2. Do not attack people over music preferences. Not in Toronto. Not in Atlanta. Not in New York. Not in Los Angeles. Not anywhere on this earth. A song is a song. A speaker is a speaker. If somebody's music is bothering you, walk the other way. Put in your headphones. Cross the street. That's how adults handle sonic discomfort in public spaces. Takeaway 3. If you're an influencer, a streamer, a personality, a commentator, a journalist, a podcast host, think twice before you laugh at these clips on your own platform. Think twice before you boost them. Think twice before you turn them into content for your own channel. Because every share, every laugh, every cosign is a tiny contribution to the escalation ladder. And the escalation ladder is not a metaphor. It's a real thing with real steps. And every step gets steeper, and every step gets more expensive. Now, before I wrap this whole thing up, I want to acknowledge something directly. I know some of y'all are going to come into the comments and say I'm being one-sided in this video. I know some of y'all are going to say I'm carrying water for Kendrick Lamar. I know some of y'all are going to say I'd have a different tone if the incidents had come from the other side of the aisle. And I want to address that criticism head-on right now, on camera, so nobody can misquote me later. If this exact same footage, the ding-dong ditch stunt, the doorstep harassment, the public assault over a song, had come from Kendrick Lamar's supporters aimed at Drake's supporters, I would be on this same camera, in this same lighting, saying the same exact thing. I would be calling it corny. I would be calling it dangerous. I would be pointing out the same escalating pattern. I would be reading the same kind of unanimous comment section. Because the pattern is the problem. Not the flag. Not the jersey. Not the artist. The pattern itself. And that's really the whole point of this video. Because in the end, none of this is really about Kendrick Lamar. None of this is really about Drake. None of this is even really about hip-hop as a genre. This is about a broader cultural phenomenon where obsessive online communities lose the plot completely, forget their own boundaries, and start acting on the internet like it's a real-life battlefield with real-life stakes and real-life enemies. And when the online battlefield finally spills over into the real one, and it always spills eventually, real people get hurt. Not artists. Not celebrities. Not billionaires. Regular folks. Somebody's cousin. Somebody's brother. Somebody's son. Somebody's coworker. Somebody's neighbor. That's who eats the consequences of this pattern. Not the parasocial contingent making the clips. Not the streamers boosting them. The bystander who happened to press play on the wrong song at the wrong intersection on the wrong evening. So take this video for what it is. Take it as a warning. Take it as a mirror. Take it as an invitation to sit with the pattern I'm describing and figure out where you stand in it personally. Are you laughing at these clips when they hit your timeline? Are you sharing them with your group chats? Are you rooting for one side to embarrass the other? Or are you the one who's willing to say, enough, we're done, this ain't the culture I want to be part of anymore? Because the answer to that question is going to determine what the next 12 months of this feud actually look like. And if the trend line I've been describing tonight continues at its current speed, the next 12 months are going to feature at least one incident that none of us are ready for. None of us. Mark my words on that. Screenshot this video. Come back to it. I'ma be here. All right, family. I've said my piece. I've dropped my read. I've laid out the pattern for the record. Now I want to hear from y'all in the comments. Drop a comment down below and tell me, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Do you agree that a specific corner of this fandom has crossed a line that shouldn't have been crossed? Or do you think I'm off base and this is just standard internet nonsense that'll blow over by next week? I read every comment. I respond to as many as I can. Let's have that conversation together in the section down below, because this ain't the kind of thing that gets solved by one guy talking into a camera. This gets solved by all of us talking about it out loud until the culture shifts. And one more thing before I roll out for the night. If y'all made it this far in the video, that means we vibed. That means we clicked. That means you rock with the way I break these things down piece by piece. So the least I can ask is, smash that like button, lock in with the channel if you ain't already subscribed, and turn on the little bell notification so you don't miss the next drop. Because I got a whole slate of coverage coming your way this week, including a full breakdown of the industry mechanics that made this beef possible in the first place, plus a deep dive into the parasocial economy that keeps producing footage like the clips we watched tonight. Those videos are going to hit different, and I don't want you to miss a single one of them. Alright, that's the read. That's the story. That's the pattern in full color. I'm out. Peace, family. Catch y'all on the next one. Stay safe out there. Do not knock on strange doors. Do not jump strangers over songs. And do not, under any circumstances, let a rap beef between two grown millionaires turn you into a headline. Peace.